Hello everyone, my name is Garvin and I read things and ramble on about them on the internet for your entertainment. Today we're going to look at the most famous entry in a series of real cities that once were lost, but now are found. The Roman city of Pompeii. Now, some of y'all might be unaware that the city was ever lost to begin with, but after the fall of the Roman Empire, the location of the city was, shall we say, misplaced? Today we're going to talk about the rediscovery of Pompeii and the early work to uncover it, and it's going to get just a hair, just a touch wild. Before I get into that, quick note, this is brought to you by a vote from my Everwise patrons, whose ranks you can join for as little as $1 a month. By joining, you get a vote on future content, as well as access to patron-only content. There's a link below in the description, and if you join now, there's at least 2 polls up and running for next year's content. Now, these videos are meant to be introductions to the lost and recovered cities, not in-depth dives, but I will be providing list of my sources for y'all to start digging deeper. Plus, if there's interest, I might return and do more expanded, more in-depth looks at these cities in the future. For now, though, let's dig into Pompeii. Pompeii was a city on the Italian peninsula founded in or around the 6th to 7th century BC, and on August 24th, 79 AD, it was destroyed by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. I'm pretty sure all, or at least most of you know that. For a long time, the location of Pompeii was relatively well known, with Roman emperors even stationing guards there to prevent looting and disturbing the dead. However, as the Western Roman Empire fell apart at the seams and disasters, invasions, and plagues racked Europe in general and Italy specifically, the exact location of the city kind of slipped everyone's minds. To be fair, what with the chaos, mass death, population movements, and resettlements, it was one of those busy times in history, but it was only a matter of time before Pompeii was rediscovered, honestly. In 1592, Domenico Fondant discovered Roman murals on buried walls while digging a series of underground aqueducts. He recorded this but didn't tell very many people about it, or at least that's how it seems, because major work on the site didn't happen until 1709 AD, over 100 years later. And this is when a group of workmen found the walls to the theater of Herculaneum, a sister city to Pompeii that was also destroyed in the eruption, and they turned around and told their boss. And that boss was the Prince de Buff. That's how my pronunciation guide insists I say it, so I apologize. And the prince promptly looted the site. Because at the time there was this incredible appetite to own real classical Roman artifacts. And having a bunch that you literally dug out of a real ruined city in Italy, ooh, maximum cool points. And one of the many things I've learned studying history is that the nobility of just about any culture is all about racking up the highest amount of cool points possible, and to hell with the damage that causes. They gots to be the coolest in any party and social gathering, and they don't care what it costs other people. Is that class prejudice I'm displaying? Maybe, maybe, but I don't care. That said, the damage the prince would do was small potatoes compared to what was coming. Because in 1738, King Charles III of the Bourbon dynasty acquired the rights to the site, and he commissioned his royal engineers to strip this place bare. He sent his chosen treasure hunter, and let me just apologize to any Spanish people listening for my pronunciation. I'm trying my best. Roque Joaquin de Albuquerque, a Spanish royal engineer. Albuquerque would blast his way into villas and public buildings with gunpowder, just boring tunnels, and strip entire buildings of their murals, frescoes, statues, and anything that looked like his royal patron would be vaguely interested in, all gone. He did this without keeping any records of what artifacts he cooked from what buildings, or recording what order he approached any of the buildings, and worst of all, he would constantly backfill his tunnels to keep people from knowing just where and when he had been anywhere. He would also move artifacts around, staging finds for wealthy patrons showing up for tours. He would basically take a bunch of artifacts, rebury them somewhere else, and right when his, patrons were coming by for a tour, he would stage his workmen digging these up and go, "Oh, hey, how lucky! You're here just in time for us to find this Roman clay pot that we have no idea what it does because I didn't bother recording the context in which it was found." Um, as you can guess, this robbed his finds of all context and was disastrous for people who actually wanted to learn from the site. Some of you, my ever curious listeners, may be asking, what the hell is context and why is losing it disastrous? Fair questions. In archaeology, context, also called provenance, is basically the information about where and when the artifact was found. To answer it properly, you have to answer such questions as, where did you find the artifact? In what strata, basically what layer of soil or stone, did you find the artifact in? Because that helps date it. What did you find around this artifact? What was the social situation the artifact was in? To give an example, a clay pot in a kitchen is likely to have a lot of different uses than a clay pot in a backyard, right? Without context, the artifact becomes kind of unmoored from its culture, and we can't use it to learn more about the history and lives of the people who would have used it in the past. I mean, yes, you have this cool clay pot with cool art on it, and that's great, but was it used for holding cooking oil, flowers, dormice? Which, by the way, was a thing that Romans used clay pots for, holding dormice. See, context matters if you want to learn about the people who lived at the places you're digging up. And if you don't, you're just looting the dead. And for what? Thankfully, there was some pushback to this, starting in 1750 when Carl Weber, a Swiss engineer, was hired, and he started creating a systematic approach to working on the site. He insisted on the documentation of all discoveries, where they were found, what they were found in, what was found around them. He instituted sketches, journal entries, that kind of thing, as well as working in a methodical section by section manner. He basically would dig along the roads and then excavate each building in turn instead of, boring in with blasting powder. Now, digging down from the top is less destructive, and it lets you preserve artifacts for more than one time period, as well as building a sort of chronological map, as well as a physical map of use of the site over time and generations. Alberti hated this and often worked to sabotage this effort by destroying documents and artifacts he couldn't cart off, and increasing his effort to backfill tunnels and cover his tracks. Why did he do this? We honestly don't know. There's no evidence left behind as to why. Honestly, my personal suspicion is, like a lot of government and military officials of the time, he was engaged in side business and likely felt that these efforts to professionalize and systemize the digging would ruin his black market work. I want to note real fast, that's a personal opinion, and I have no evidence that he was engaged in such activities, but it was common for men in his position at the time to do so, so I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Carl wouldn't be alone in his struggle, however. In 1755, local scholars formed the Academy of Herculaneum to work to preserve the site and record the context of future discoveries. Additional aid showed up in the person of Johann Winkelmann, I hope I pronounced that right, who at the time was working for the papal office and through what authority he had in backing up Carl's methods. Jonham, by the way, is rather famous for coming up with ways to figure out the difference between Greek, Roman, and Italian art. So, not a small name on his own. In 1764, Carl Weber would pass away, and he was replaced by Francisco La Vega, who took over and continued and refined his methods. At this point, the digging continued using Carl's methods, and there were a number of discoveries such as the Gladiator Barracks, the Temple of Isis, and the large and small theater. Upon La Vega's death in 1850, the digging slowed down incredibly and would kind of just pause until after the unification of Italy. In 1860, the unification of Italy was in full swing, with the southern part of Italy, the Kingdom of Naples, unifying with the northern Kingdom of Sardinia in large chunks throughout the year. The King of Naples was not a fan of this, by the way. It was during all of this that perhaps the most influential men to lead the digs before the 20th century would come forth. His name was Giuseppe Fiorelli, and he came to Pompeii on a mission. Fiorelli wasn't just an ardent scholar with a passion for the classical times, he was also an Italian patriot and had been arrested by the King of Naples for political activities. And while in jail, he wrote a 4-volume work about Pompeii and the artifacts found within it. So this dude was into it. When he came to Pompeii, he instituted a rigorous set of procedures to preserve the site and the context of the artifacts within. He divided the city into 9 regions and 22 town blocks, with each individual building and house getting its own number. He created a way of duplicating the bodies of Roman victims of the eruption by filling the hollow spaces in the stone with plaster, thus giving us a view of the Roman victims of the volcano. He also led the creation of daybooks. That's a book that's dated, and in that book there's each artifact found on the given day, when in the day, where, as well as who was working that day and in which section. Through all of this, he's able to start using the site to reconstruct the history and the life of the city itself. And if that's not enough, he fought to keep the site open to foreign scholars and founded the School of Archaeology at Pompeii, teaching Italians and foreigners alike the history and the techniques used to dig up and preserve the site, as well as what they have discovered about the city itself. Much of what he pioneered is still in use today. Because of the work of men like Fiorelli and Carl Weber and La Vega and others, we are able to start using archaeology to learn about the lives and history of the peoples and cities of the past. This makes artifacts more than just curiosities or pieces in a game of social prestige. It also means we're no longer completely dependent on written text from the past. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of written text. The sheer amount of book reviews on this channel and blog alone should hint to that. But before the printing press, the only books that were written, let alone preserved, were the ones that appealed to the 1%. And the view of a Roman senator isn't going to be the same as a Roman farmer in Gaul, now is it? As valuable as every preserved written work is, archaeology gives us something else. It gives us a look at the people who didn't get to write down their thoughts and dreams and beliefs, and gives us a peek into what their lives were like, and maybe a window into their thoughts as well. I will say this, though. If you want to do historians and archaeologists in the future a favor, find yourself something non-perishable, say a good slab of marble, granite, or some non-rusting metal. Sit down and just chisel out some notes about your day-to-day life. Hell, talk about something important to you, even if it's mundane stuff like football, the music of Taylor Swift, cars, makeup, whatever. If it's something you're passionate about, feel free to carve that into this non-perishable tablet you're making. And be sure to leave some information about yourself as well. I promise you, in 1,000 years, some historian will be utterly gleeful that you did, especially if some disaster befalls our civilization and we collapse as dramatically as the Romans, or worse, the Bronze Age empires, and, you know, be like the Mycenaeans with our writing system completely wiped out. That would, not going to dig too much into that thought. We're going to just move on. But hell, folks, if you do this, do me a favor. Make sure you tell them about yourselves, but add a line that you're doing this because Garvin told you to, but don't explain who I am. Let's make the future sweat trying to figure out who or what this Garvin is and why people are leaving messages to the future because of it. Can't make it too easy for the future nerds, right? Well, with me telling my listeners to commit historical recordings and giant pranks on people in the future, I think we've reached a good stopping point. I hope you found this video informative or at least entertaining. If you did, please leave a like, a comment, or even subscribe, as all of these help me in my eternal struggle against the dread Lord algorithm. Terror be on his name. Speaking of help in my eternal struggle, thanks to my biggest supporter, Big Steve. I hope you enjoyed this video, man. I couldn't do this without you. Next week, we're going to reach all the way back to the Bronze Age and the capital of the Hittite Empire and bring that front and center. I hope you'll join me, but until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and of course, keep reading.